Under pressure. There's, yeah, as far as the four regulative principles go, you can give a lot of classes on them because they're the foundations of human society. So when you have something which is the foundation of human society, it can be expanded on a lot. And then when you put in, on top of that, okay, well, why are these foundations relevant to a spiritual society and a Krishna conscious society? Then they can obviously be expanded on even more and more and more and more. So a couple of classes, like me, isn't really going to expand on them that much. And it also means that you can, like I said 2 weeks ago, Satyaraj, I think, he's written a whole book just on the topic of how the regulative principles of freedom, what to speak of all the other intricacies that can be expanded on. There's a reason when we take our vows to become serious Gaudiya Vaishnavas accepting the Guru, that those four principles are there. So that's a whole other topic in and of itself as well, like why pick these, there's lots of things which we follow. Why did Prabhupada pick these four things along with chanting the Maha Mantra? We touch on that a little bit. And so that's why I want to keep the focus on, okay, here's the basics of these principles, how they free us, rather than getting into the intricacies of, just going to talk about illicit sex today at some point. Well, how does that fit in with brahmachari life, brahmacharini life? How strict is it within the confines of the temple? How to act publicly, and at home, well, what are the differences? Especially when it comes to the Grihastha ashram. There's a whole part of the third canto and a whole part of the fourth canto which deals with it. And then you have to then discuss, well, but also, in some aspects, depends on your caste. Whether you're a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra. Kshatriyas will have many wives. So, if you've got a lot of wives, well, you're obviously going to be having a lot more Krishna conscious sex life than if you're a Shudra where you have one wife. So how does that work? And the difficulties of that due to the nature of those ashrams. So I'm not going to get into all of that. It's way too complex, and I don't want to. So there's a basic principle that then we can go away and think, okay, well, how does this fit into my life at the moment, and why is it a solid foundation that this practice is there as part of our vows, rather than say, oh yeah, everyone follow Ekadashi. We don't make a vow to follow Ekadashi. We follow it, but it's not something we promise to do when we take our vows. Interestingly enough, there's a nice quote related to do with Prashadam that talks about how honouring Prashadam once, because how many Ekadashis we'd have to follow just for one plate of Prashadam, the effect that one plate of Prashadam has. So, which when I read it this morning, I was like, yay! Because I messed up so many places. But anyway, the focus is on this principle, and then hopefully we'll get to the conclusion today as well, of our focus may be slightly different to the focus of like, oh yeah, we talked about 2 weeks ago, establishing a genuine human society. That may be part of our mission, Varnashram Dhan, but the goal of Varnashram Dhan is this verse again, which for those that weren't here 2 weeks ago, I'll repeat, and those who may have forgotten, that this is always our focus. This text 34 from chapter 9. And Krishna says, most of us should meditate. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. so this is our goal. This is the goal of following the regulative principles. It's the goal of why we're chanting Hare Krishna. It's the goal of why we do service. It's the goal of everything. Everything. We should never forget that, okay, no matter what we're doing in life, this is actually the goal, and that everything we're doing is to facilitate this goal. Definitely we shouldn't forget this when we're chanting our japa, because that's the foundation of everything else. Like I said on Friday night, if we're just following the four principles and we're not chanting, and by not chanting I mean chanting good rounds, then what's the point of just practicing austerities? Where's the goal? The goal isn't to practice austerities. The goal is to become Krishna conscious. Krishna doesn't practice austerities in Vrindavan. The austerity for Krishna is like, you know, when for some reason there's some hindrance to his devotional loving exchanges with his devotees. Which is why when you read Krishna books, sometimes you read, I remember when I would read about his pastimes with the demons in Krishna book, and it was probably mildly offensive, but due to my very conditioned state at that point, I remember thinking, well, this is all like the same. It's like, you know, Krishna's doing something, some demon turns up, and Krishna kills him really quickly. And I was thinking, where's the, like, I was used to movies or Kami books where there's some, you know, sometimes the hero may get defeated and he's got to go off and practice more, and he comes back and he defeats him, and whereas some big demon comes up and there's this build up, this massive demon that, and Krishna just like, kills him. And I was thinking, well, this is, you know, after a few stories like this, I'm like, oh, this is a bit like the same. And it's just, well, Krishna doesn't want to waste time. It's like, yeah, here's this, some pastime, but my real business is reciprocating with my devotees. I'm doing this, let's get it over. And it's done. Even when Krishna appears, because get the around Jai and Vijay, see that, okay, Vishnu wants to fight, but obviously you can't invite Kuntha. If he went and someone comes up to the altar in the morning and is offering him prayers, and he says, come on in. That devotee basically sees him crying, saying, no Lord, no, why? Why are you doing this to me? But Jai and Vijay, they could sense, okay, he wants to fight. So they arrange it and they come. But even then when he appears to fight, to satisfy this desire that, okay, I want to fight, it doesn't go on for very long. He still is like pretty quick. Enjoys it for a little while, and it's like, that. Okay, let's go. And then he gets back to his loving exchanges. That's our goal. We want to take part in those loving exchanges. That whatever we do, whatever we see, we're seeing this loving exchange that Krishna has with his devotees, and then also then repositioning the conditioned souls in that position as well, that they can have loving exchanges with Krishna too. And then seeing how Krishna arranges that for them. And that becomes a loving exchange in itself. I was speaking to Gopal yesterday about Sankirtan a little bit, and how there's that going deeper that Sankirtan has to become, and this is the same for all preaching. I'm using Sankirtan because it's my experience, but it's all preaching. That it has to become more than just, oh, I'm doing this. Like, okay, this is how I cook, this is how I serve. That's nice, it's refining it, so it's done nicely. But the internals has to be that we're recognizing that actually we want to reconnect people with Krishna. That's the simple fact of it. So when Sankirtan becomes about that, and preaching becomes about that, okay, I genuinely, when I'm chanting my japa, because that's how we're feeling, that we genuinely want to connect people back to their original position, then that's very transformative, because you're engaging them with Krishna and you're saying, okay, this is how I want you to reciprocate with me. I don't want to score, I don't want my mind to be peaceful, I don't want all these other motivations. What I want is actually to just just reconnect. So I'm out here. If you want to use me as your tool, do it. If you don't want to, okay, well I'm trying anyway. Just to reconnect people with their constitutional position. Servants of Krishna. If we're thinking like that, then naturally we'll always be thinking of Krishna. Because then we'll be thinking, okay, who is Krishna? How do we connect people? How do I know Krishna? What do I know about Krishna? How do I know Krishna more? What am I following? What's getting in the way of me knowing Krishna? And if we're thinking like that, then we start to examine things like, well, how are these regulative principles that we've made a promise for, how are they empowering me to become this transparent medium by which Lord Chaitanya's mercy can flow? Then it becomes very interesting, because then we're looking at our lives and thinking, okay, how can I change so this mercy can just flow through me? How can I be a servant? Not, okay, please Krishna, make my mind quiet, I've got to do this because it's my service. I don't know, if it rains like it's raining now and I have to go and sanctum, it's like, look for other stuff, do some other service. Bring a tag and I say, look, I've been thinking about a flyer for this program. What do you think? Yeah, I know it's raining. Rather than going out in the rain with a brolly. That's my favourite. But anyway, so that's what I wanted. This focus is more on how do these principles help us control our life, free us from the material conditioning by which Krishna consciousness can develop in the right way. Rather than the senses of, oh yeah, this is done for society, human society, to keep it in check, which is true. Or, oh, this is done because then we'll be self-controlled and we'll be good yogis. No, it's to free us from ignorance, basically, and to keep us free from material energy's influence on us. In other words, principles that allow us to take shelter of Krishna, to empower us to take shelter of Krishna. They make chanting easier, in other words. We've all probably experienced when we first started chanting, we weren't necessarily following the regulative principles. Very few of us were probably following the regulative principles. We may have been following one or two by default. Like we may not have liked intoxication, or we may just have not been attracted to gambling in its very gross form, or we may not have been particularly in a relationship at that point, so we're like, oh well, yeah, celibate. Because default, not because of any kind of sense of, well, this is good for me. But we were chanting, and then at some point we were thinking, okay, well, how do I improve this chanting? How do I get a higher taste for the chanting? And that gets us to that realization, that these things help us chant. It's quite miraculous. Prabhupada talked in Australia in one interview about, he got asked, can you perform miracles? And Prabhupada said yes, very quickly. He didn't stop and think, he just went yes, smiled on his face. And the person was a bit shocked. And they kind of, you can hear in the tape, there's some laughing. And Prabhupada said, very matter-of-factly, like, no, I'm not joking, yes I can. And then the Australian was like thinking, oh, here we go, got a story here. So somebody thinks they can perform miracles. And they said, oh, well, what have you done? And Prabhupada just looked at his devotees and said, this is my miracle. And then very quickly went on to explain, yeah, look, these are hippies, and now they're following these principles, which in the 60s and 70s was miraculous. As we, even now, we know hedonistic society generally if we go out, like we get told, isn't it, yeah, don't tell people about the four regs, because it's not attractive. You're not going to get people joining Krishna consciousness by telling them the four regs. If they do, then generally our thought is like, okay, there's something wrong with this person, because they're wanting to join because of these austerities, and well, was that normal? Be a little bit suspicious. And I would be, I'd be like, hang on, you don't want to enjoy materially, you've got no spiritual education, no spiritual knowledge, and you don't want to enjoy materially? You want to suffer? What's wrong with you? If you tell me later, then I'll be really. Anyway, so that's the understanding. Much longer introduction than I was planning. We're sort of cleanliness, austerity, mercy, yeah, do it. So anyway, that's the idea. Now, we're going to start off with the one that, I'm going to say something, which may cause an initial reaction based on our false ego. That's like, hang on. I don't like the sound of that. Might be coming more from this half of the room than this half of the room. So I'm just warning you. After the initial reaction, I'll explain a little bit, and then the initial reaction hopefully will go away. Yeah, my mind's going, okay, what's she laughing at? Is it my glasses? Is it sort of tilt her head I did? Is it that?
No, I was laughing because it's true. All of we are miracles, because if we see how our lifeless people, so I'm laughing now. It's funny.
Maybe South Americans got the same sense of humour as the Germans. That's a joke. So, anyway, the principles. The first one is the principle of cleanliness, which is illicit sex life. Now, we've got the difficulty with this is, by Western standards, this is the one that, when you get into the kind of intricacies of how a temple functions and a society that is still accepting, like, okay, we know philosophically, theoretically that we're not the body, but still we're going through a process of actually realizing we're not the body, so our body has an effect on us. This is the one that generally, as Westerners, the very gross is very easy. Like you say, okay, yeah, no illicit sex, boom, that's it, no sex life, I'm not having sex. And it's like, nah. Now, Nectar of Instruction, one of the first books we should read, says, okay, this is something you have to tolerate. It's not something you're going to ever become free of. It's a matter of tolerating it. And it gives the way to tolerate it, through the tongue, controlling the senses, not acting on them. And then we can read in Bhagavad Gita, it says, okay, if you want to understand the modes of material nature, how they work, how they affect us, we can put that into practice. But generally, as Westerners, the toughest one we find is when it gets into the subtleties of it, where it's not necessarily the gross act, but it is the subtle exchanges. Now, this may not be breaking the regs, but if not checked, it leads to breaking the regs. And we may sometimes think, oh, no, that's not going to happen. But the Bhagavad Gita says, contemplation of the senses leads to making plans for how to enjoy, and then you put those plans into action, and then eventually, unless it's checked, you'll act on it. And they think again very grossly, like, well, if I contemplate something, You know, well, I'm not going to act on it because I can see that coming a lot easier. It's not like, oh yeah, I've had some lusty thought, so now I'm going to run out and enjoy. No, that's very gross way. But it's the subtle things that may take years to actually happen. But it's just that all of a sudden these little seeds get planted, and then, you know, what we were very strict on, little bits, you know, there's that analogy, isn't it? Water and stone. You don't notice the stone getting eroded away by the water. But then it does. You see all these pebbles, isn't it, with holes in it. You think, oh, this is stone, how do this, you get a drill in things, it's hard. And yet water has just done it. It may have taken thousands of years, but it's done it. So it's the same. There's certain subtle aspects to this, which, like I said, they're not breaking the regs, but if not really checked, and if we're not strict on them, can lead to it. And some of it may seem like, oh, hang on, that's a bit too much. But it's there for a reason. Prabhupada often said the one thing, the one criticism he had of his disciples at that time was that they're not scared of material energy enough. And I think that's the same then and the same now. That a lot of times we read something and we don't have enough fear of material energy. Like the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam says, okay, this is how you act. So if you act like that, actually you'll be safe. But our false egos, because we have this Western conditioning, this Western education, we don't really see the problem with it. We're really convinced and conditioned into something that's a big deal. That when we hear certain things, we're like, oh, what's the big deal? It's because we're not scared enough. We don't understand how dangerous material energy is. How relentless she is. How she just sees a little opening and she's like, right, here you go. Little bit. Like we had a nice play. It's not like, you know, we all need some prostitute, whether they're male or female, society person, coming along that's the nicest looking that, you know, gets us disturbed. That's very gross. Material energy doesn't have to put that effort into this. She just puts in little things there, and it chips away. Because we're not scared enough, we're too attached to our false ego. So when we're talking about the cleanliness aspect, how to become free of illicit sex life, it's not just necessarily the gross. That's there, it's a very strict, gross, okay, no illicit sex activity. But then how to refine that. Illicit sex connections. There's interesting verses throughout the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita where it changes this. It doesn't say no illicit sex, it says no illicit sex connections. And then that becomes very much more refined. It's like, well, what's an illicit sex connection? Then that's down to the motivation and the consciousness behind the activity. It's like, why am I doing this? And I often talk, Vijay Prabhu once asking, like, he got asked here by some Sankirtan devotees at the time that were brahmacharis, how do we stay brahmachari when doing Sankirtan? Now this is important, the male body attacks the soul differently to the female body in this aspect. The male body reacts in a much more gross way than the female body reacts towards the motivations towards illicit sex are different. Maya has a very easy job with the male body because it's just something nice, it's very visual. And so something nice walks down the street and we get attacked. That may not be the same for the female body. I can't remember what's happening. Unfortunately. So it's that. So then it's a matter of, like, okay, tolerate this. Well, how do I tolerate it? So the devotees naturally asked, this happens, we go out in Sankirtan, can't avoid it. How do we stay brahmachari? And so Vijay very simply turned around and said, okay, well, you don't, he was talking to brahmacharis. He said, okay, you don't hit up women on their own. and especially young ones. And by young, I don't mean kids, I mean like young adults. And you know, if you do hit up a woman, do it if she's with a man, but better to just hit up men if you can, but if it's unavoidable, then hit up couples. So that was the question, how to remain brahmachari. They weren't asking how do you stay devotees, they were saying how do you stay brahmachari. So that's the difference. And then literally the next day, all the brahmacharis were like panicking. Because it's like, well, hang on, our Sankirtan schools will go down. And I'd heard this argument many, many years before when I was a brahmachari and had the same reactions, like, hang on, that's like literally 2/3 of my Sankirtan school gone. And then I remember then thinking about it, it's like, well, why? And then you're out in the street and you start noticing, well, hang on, you know, I've just walked past 2 guys to hit up a girl. Why? And that's a very serious question, especially if you're brahmachari, brahmacharini, when you've had the option and you've not taken it. Now, it's a very subtle thing, but it leads to the gross. And generally our reaction is, oh, obviously we'll come up with something, because on a very, very, very subtle level, we're still enjoying the exchange of energy that comes with the opposite sex. It is different. We can try and deny it. We can have some excuses to deny it. But we're in denial. As Tanya says, we're in that big Egyptian river. Denial. Hey. Classics, it was a bit. Now, we don't like the sound of that, because it challenges us to actually, like, well, hang on a very, 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 very simple, subtle level, we have to change. And then we have to think, well, why don't I want to make, why is that such a big deal? And we'll come up with lots of excuses, oh, I'm just seeing the soul, every living entity has a soul, I'm just saving the soul, I'm not going to... So, okay, why pass 2 souls to to engage that soul? What was wrong with these 2? Or 3? Or 5? Sometimes I've seen, and it wasn't an ISKCON devotee, it was from another movement, and he was a respected devotee, and I remember being on Sankirtan and he had turned up to do Sankirtan, and he literally went from quite a wide street in Cheltenham, and he literally almost ran from one side of the street through a crowd, on a Saturday it was, through a crowd of people to the other side to hit up a female. And when I saw it, I was like, thinking, okay, that's a bit too much. In my head I was thinking, oh, sometimes you don't see someone, or you get eye contact with someone and you're not with those, and okay, you've got a connection with Sankirtan, it's like, okay, yeah, you've got that connection, so that's where you go. And that's one thing. But to make that effort, I was like, that's in my mind. And I remember asking him, because I knew him, I said, you know, you just what? And he was like, oh, I felt, and I said, well, did she take a book? And he went, no. I don't know what you were feeling was wrong there. And it shocked me. But then I thought, well, okay, instead of getting critical, I was thinking, well, okay, do I do that? Have I done that? How much do I do it? You know, I might not run across the street, but I thought, well, how much do I ignore certain people, because without even noticing it, my body's attacked me and convinced me in a very, very quick split second, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I was thinking, okay, how does that, then that leads, it has an effect on consciousness, and we can feel it after the exchange. If we're honest, if we're introspective, we feel it after the exchange. We're really happy, it puts a little spring in the step, you know, something's there, and then you have to fight it, put it away. So the question is, well, why disturb ourselves? Why go out of our way to cause a disturbance, even if it's materially nice. And so in temple interactions it's exactly the same. Prabhupada was very strict on how devotees interacted, even married couples. Prabhupada in Mayapur, when he saw married couples walking together talking, he said, no, this is illicit sex connections, in public. He said, in the privacy of the home is one thing, but in public, no. And he said, that they should walk separately, because the Indian community at that time had some culture, and would look at his disciples and just see them and say, see, look, Westerners, no culture. Now we hear that, man and wife, walking down the street in Mayapur, in the city, and no, they shouldn't be kind of just frivolously talking together. And we're like, well, that's good. But that's the standard of connection that Prabhupada was saying. Yes, in public there's a way of acting, in private there's a way of acting. What to speak of unmarried brahmachari and brahmacharinis? The interaction there should be very, very, very little. There's a reason David Maharaj tends to have the brahmacharini ashram in one city and the brahmachari ashram in a completely different city. It's so then, even if the mind wants to, there's no excuse to try and make it's for service. Now, we're not so strict here on these things. We're kind of a little bit relaxed because it's like, well, there's service, there's interactions. But then that requires us, there are interactions of service, and that's fine. But then that requires us to find a cultured way in which we interact. That doesn't mean the brahmacharis are just heavy and don't speak politely to their mothers. And then it requires the mothers to look at the brahmacharis not as future husbands, but as like, okay, they're brahmacharis, they're serious monks, I have to respect them. I'm not saying that's what goes on, but in other temples and in experiences, there is that phenomenon. I don't know in the minds of everyone here, and I don't know the motivations, but I know previously experiences, it's there. So it requires us to actually become free, to understand how the body attacks us when it's on this very, very base desire, the subtleties of it. So it may not be that we're breaking the regs grossly, but we hear within ISKCON so many stories of different fall downs. We hear different gossips of what goes on behind, no one knew about until all of a sudden this brahmachari and this brahmacharini are saying, oh yeah, we're getting married. And then something nice is, oh yes, this is how we did it, but actually, well, this is how it happened. We don't want to be like that. We want to do it in a cultured way. And then, unfortunately, ISKCON has a higher divorce rate than the non-devoted world. The divorce rate in ISKCON is very, very high. So if we've all got good brahmachari training and we're all following the regulative principles, the question is, well, how is there such a high divorce rate? What's going wrong? Because if the marriage is done in a cultured way, in a Krishna conscious way, there's 7 ways that a marriage will be unsuccessful, and there's 4 ways that marriage will be successful. Sorry, 7 ways in which people get together that will lead to an unsuccessful marriage, and 4 ways in which devotees get together which leads to a successful marriage. By successful marriage, I mean that they stay together and they lead Krishna conscious, productive lives. Go back home and together. 7 ways to do it incorrectly. 4 ways to do it properly means there's more of a chance to do it incorrectly than there is correctly, which means we have to put effort. We can't just let it happen. I can't remember off the top of my head now what those 7 and 4 are, but pretty much a lot of the marriages that we see within our society and the ways in which we get together are done the 7 incorrect ways. And that comes from subtle interactions. What Bhagavad Gita calls, the illicit sex connections. In other words, it may not be the gross activity, but it's inside the mind, there's some subtle kind of thing going on. I remember at another temple it was always a joke that, amongst the brahmacharis, that if one of the brahmacharinis that was working in the deity department, started turning up with Maha sweets in the morning, and you better watch yourself. Oh, you know, oh, you're going out in Sankton? Yeah, here you go, here's a Maha sweet, Harry Bob, gone. And it's like, hang on. Alright, I've got to watch myself. Now we think, oh, it's funny, but why did that happen? And so we have to look at ourselves and see our motivations between the exchanges. That doesn't now mean that every time a Magji speaks to the Guru, or the Guru speaks to Magji, that we're thinking, hang on, what's going on here? Why are you talking to me? No, because there is service interaction. But we behave in a cultural way that doesn't allow these subtle things to creep in. Now I'm going to get, like I said, we may end up having to do a third week. The next point is that why do we have that strict interaction between men and women? It's because in the Western culture, Western society that we're conditioned to, that's not there. And that leads to the degradation of women. We see these days feminisms, I would say modern day feminism is a symptom of the degradation of women. Because you see what are the modern day feminine ideals and how is it being manipulated by the media, how are women acting. Now generally we see in the news most of the famous women act like prostitutes and the men act like unscrupulous, for want of a better word. It's not a nice word, but anyway, I use it because it's this one. But men that basically are going out there to exploit women, that they just want to enjoy them, they don't want the responsibility that comes with a loving relationship. They just want to enjoy the gross pleasure that they can get and then go. And we see that modern day society pushes those values. It packages them in this nice way that we think, oh yeah, that's a good idea. But those good ideas would just lead to degraded states. There's a system that works Vedically. It works because the Vedic system says, you're in a prison house, this is how to become free of the prison. That you don't want to be here, it's an unnatural state for the soul, and you become conditioned. This is how you break the condition of whatever body you're in. So if you act in this way, for this particular body type, you become free. If both body types are acting in that way, it leads to a nice society that's undisturbed, but then you can practice Krishna consciousness without having to put a lot of effort into all these other disturbances. The problem is in Western society, we've been taught that the opposite of that Vedic society is actually the ideal. And the Bhagavad Gita says this will happen. What is night for the introspective sage is daytime for the gross sense enjoyer, and vice versa. So that's a philosophical analogy. It's not like, oh yeah, we're going to bed when everyone else is getting up. That may be there, but it's this nice philosophical analogy of like, yes, the activities of the introspective sage are almost diametrically opposed to the sense enjoyer. And it's on these points then when we start seeing, okay, how's our body, how to become free of our bodily conditioning, that we start having issues then, because we have a conditioned education that says this body. And this is the same for men and for women. It tends to be that the focus is put on the women's issues, not the men's, but it's the same. There's so many points where men should be acting in this way that guys don't do. And vice versa. Because of our conditioning. Because of how conditioned we are. And then when we hear them, it's like, it's just like, but the first principle that Prabhupada talks about so much in all of his classes is you're not this body. So if we're always thinking, I'm not this body, yes, this body's attacking me, I don't like the sound of this, but I'm not this body. I'm not the body. And always remembering that, yes, this is what's happening. I'm getting attacked by my body. I'm conditioned by the society that I've grown up in. Now here's the way that I can become free of it. It may not be palatable to begin with, but if I act upon it, along with Krishna consciousness, with proper knowledge of why I'm doing it, then actually in time, I'll be like, yes, this is nice, because now I'm free of this conditioning. Like Prabhupada gives an analogy, isn't it? When you first, for jaundice, all sweet stuff tastes sour, but the medicine for jaundice is sugar. So if you take sugar, it tastes sour, it's horrible. It's not nice. But then as you get better, the sugar starts to taste sweet again, the sugar cane. Not that you just drink it, taking oil and raw sugar cane. So it's the same, yes, it tastes sour, that we hear it and we react in a way that's like, this isn't nice. Over here in the Bhagavatam classes at the moment, there's all these qualities of a woman. And sometimes we read it, men and women, and we're like, phew, not sure about that. And the qualities of a man. It's the actual qualities. And we read it and think, oh, is that in modern day society? Is that relevant? Whereas the question is, well, no, to our conditioned state, are we willing to do it? Do we have enough faith in the Vedic system to say, okay, this is breaking my conditioning, it's freeing me of my conditioned state, or don't we? Now, I made the statement that modern day society leads to the degradation of women. It's very easy to see. If we can accept that the natures of man and women are different. We all like this book, Men are from Mars, Women are from Venus, and that's saying, yes, men and women are different. Bhagavatam says this is a completely different species. That the way the male falls in and the way the mind works for male is completely different to the way that the female mind and falls works. Completely different. Which is why in Vedic society, men don't really hang out with women, and women don't hang out with men, because the only thing that they have in compatible is, well, fire and butter melts, and fire melts butter. So actually, when men and women come together, the result is sex life, whether it's illicit or bona fide. Because the materially, there's a lot of incompatibility there. Because they think differently. So women always saying, well, men understand women and men like women. And it's like, we have to put a lot of effort then into understanding, oh, this is how the male false ego works, oh, this is how the female false ego works. Now we can interact in a way where it doesn't cause problems. Which is great. But we have to understand that they're different. Not one's better than the other, they're just completely different. And how do we become Krishna conscious from that point? So men, if given the chance, there's unscrupulous men which will, like I said, try and exploit. And they won't be thinking, I can do this, this and this. They're just, how can I enjoy? I like what I see, how can I enjoy it? And that's that. Nothing more complicated than that. It's literally very much like a caveman, man see, man do. There's that old analogy, isn't it? The caveman seeing the wife, beating her on the head, dragging her back to the cave, and he's like, your wife. Well, it's not far wrong. You may make all the other arrangements there, this quality, that quality, but that's pretty much it. Women don't work like that, right? You don't see man, whoa, man. But modern day society is telling you, yes, do this. Act like a man. Doesn't work. Men aren't attracted by it. Secret food. Now, in modern day society, that said, oh, that's because men are used to being in power. Well, that's one thing, but it's also, there's all these qualities of a woman, there's all the qualities of a man, and the Bhagavatam gives them because actually that's the nature of the two. And Kali Yuga, that all becomes confused, and so we have to work through it, and we're like, oh, well, okay, now we have this confused society, whereas it is mixed. because of our conditioning and education. But if we can see it, okay, if I act like this and act like this, then it's peaceful and it doesn't degrade either the man or the woman. But the foundations of this society, when we're founded on, okay, no illicit sex connections, then the women are naturally protected from unscrupulous men. And when women are protected from unscrupulous men, then you don't end up with unwanted progeny. When you don't have unwanted progeny, then those progeny are wanted because they've been conceived in a Krishna conscious cultured manner, and then they have better samskars, so they have a better chance of growing up to be good devotees. And if you have good devotees growing up, you end up with a better society. Even taking Krishna consciousness out of it, if the woman is protected by her culture, not protected like, there's a man at the door, but culturally, acting in a cultured manner protects from unscrupulous men. So the woman can protect herself. And that's true feminism. So, okay, I'm going to act in this cultured way by which actually I'm not giving access to be exploited by unscrupulous men. That's true feminism. Not the feminism that's in the modern day societies like, yes, we're actually going to start acting like men because we're after equality. Real equality is like, okay, I'm going to actually say, if you want me as your wife, you have to act in this cultured way as well, which means I don't want to be exploited. I'm not here just for your sense gratification. I have these qualities. And acting that way is feminism. And then you end up with a protected society. You end up with a society that functions in a nice way, that isn't disturbed, that can practice spiritual life without all of these disturbances. And we see a lot of disturbances in society from when they're based on sex desire, cause violence, all the rape that goes on, all the child abuse that goes on. People think child abuse and paedophilia is like a small, rare thing. I heard some radio interview with a woman who was groomed up in Rochdale, and she was, regularly raped as a child sex slave for, I think it was like 12 years. Until she was too old and then didn't want her. And she said, look, this isn't some small thing, it's an epidemic and it's everywhere. She said, you don't realise how big it is. Epidemic is quite a strong word. So you have all these things when we have a society that just doesn't control itself, that has no control. Now if we have a society which is based on, okay, I'm going to control, I'm going to tolerate these different urges, I'm going to act in a cultured way, I'm going to go out of my way to act in this cultured way, then you end up with a nice society, which is a pleasing society to be in, with an undisturbed mind that doesn't degrade. Now, we understand from the modes of material energy that when we engage in certain activities, it degrades, it lowers our consciousness. Whether it's just thinking of them, it pollutes the mind, or acting on them, which pollutes the mind even more. So if you've got a polluted mind as a devotee that's aspiring for this goal of going back to Godhead, well, you can't perform deity worship, your service is always going to be disturbed, your japa is going to be disturbed. So where's the question of thinking of Krishna? Where's the question of being a preacher? Because we're always having to work with the disturbance. Whereas if we tolerate the body, not act on it, not dwell on it, we just tolerate it, then Krishna consciousness can actually increase. We can become proper servants. It requires effort, it requires honesty, it requires a sense of like, okay, internal regulation. Like, okay, what is my motivation? Why am I doing this? I'm not doing it in a harsh way. Generally in temples, most of the complaints the Matajis have about the brahmacharis is, oh, they were too harsh. Oh, yeah. And generally the brahmacharis' complaints about the Matajis is, oh, they're too friendly. Why do they want to talk to us? They're just trying to trap us in their Mataji web. But if we act correctly from both sides, then that won't be there. If brahmacharis are respectful towards women, well, where's the question of harshness? If we see women like our mothers, we wouldn't be harsh to our mother. And then if the Matajis are respectful towards the brahmachari's position, then they're not over-familiar. They're not overly friendly. Now it's natural for a female, someone in a female body to be friendly, to be caring. And that's what I was saying, in the woman is generally quite mixed, because if you put that in an unmarried situation, then that's when the brahmacharis thinking, oh, they're trying to trap. And so then they're harsh, oh, I'm not going to be trapped. And thoughts come into their head and like, and go home and beat the head with a shoe. But if we act in this cultured way, that we learn how to act, not in our conditioned state, and it may not seem nice, but we learn how to do it, then actually these illicit sex connections, they become, we don't want them there. And then we can develop real chastity and real celibacy. And for both men and women, this is an amazingly good thing. David Mukmaji always says that when non-devotees come to the preaching centres, he says, don't think they don't talk about you outside. Because I remember asking him once, there was me and another brahmachari running certain programs, and he asked, okay, how are the programs going? And they were like, yeah, they're good, but there's a lot more women all of a sudden than men. And he laughed, and he said, who does the programs? And he kind of laughed and said, yes. He says, it's because the woman will come to the program, she'll see, oh, here's a nice cultured boy that doesn't want to exploit me. And so she'll tell other women. And so they'll go, oh. And so they'll come. And it's the same the other way. For the men, they go to a program and they think, oh, here's a nice woman that's not aggressive, she's chaste, she's shy. She has these nice qualities, and the man's like, okay, and he goes and tells his mates, really nice girls, they're not like the ones we meet in nightclubs, which are like, you don't know where they've been, or how many times. They're nice, clean, chaste, kind of, they're not prostitutes. And they're like, oh, okay. And so then he says, yes, and then they come, and non-devotees, they tell everyone, and so you see an increase. So he uses that. He says, okay, and doing programs, it attracts this, and then before it gets out of hand, you introduce the women introduce the men to other men, like that. And then maybe asking, very embarrassingly, he picked on a brahmachari in class here. He said, how did you come? Why did you come? And the brahmachari is very strict. Brahmachari is very serious about the fact that he's a very strict brahmachari, and he got all like. And Maharaj started laughing and said, you met so-and-so Mataji on the street, didn't you? He said, yes, and then I went to a yoga class. And Maharaj kind of laughed and said, yeah, but why did you go to the yoga class? And he's very strict, serious brahmachari. And Maharaj said, was it because it was Mataji, wasn't it? And everyone was laughing. But his brahmachari was just being blasted. That's one thing, but then we don't act like that in a temple. And it's not even like we're acting badly to do that. It's just natural Vaishnava etiquette, Vaishnava dealings. The natural cultured way to act is attractive, because it frees the soul from the conditioned state of material energy. It's natural. Everyone, when you meet people that aren't devotees, and they'll talk about devotees and say, oh, they have this glow, they have this energy, it's so attractive. Krishna consciousness is attractive. Vaishnava culture is attractive. Generally, the problems that we have in implementing it when we're getting into the subtleties of these principles, the cleanliness, is that we're still conditioned, unfortunately. Now, if we see it, what's possible when we're not conditioned, when we start to become free, when we tolerate this, when we actually start becoming clean of mind and body, our intelligence becomes clean, then we're in the mode of goodness. Lust doesn't disturb us. Like again, Prema Rasa talked in Swansea. He was talking with some brahmacharis, and one of the brahmacharis, aspiring brahmacharis at the time, he's no longer with us, but he asked, how do you know? He said, I'm really disturbed. How do you deal with this? And Maharaj gave a very good analogy that's fitting for both men and women. And he turned around and we sat in the temple at the back in Swansea, and he said, well, this is a noisy road. He said, you guys probably don't even notice the traffic. He said, I've just come from this quiet little place where there's no traffic and this is noisy. So he says, it's the same. Eventually you don't hear the noise anymore. And we're like, well, no, we didn't hear the traffic before, we didn't notice it. So he said, it's the same thing. Celibacy is there, it's enforced, it may be tough, it may seem like this noisy thing at first, but if you tolerate it, if you act in a cultured way, then it becomes less and less and less, and then you don't even notice it. Because you've acted in a way which is freeing you from it. And then when you're free from it, can you imagine? Okay. Being free from material desire, in other words. Because unfortunately, the sex desire is the thing that propels the whole of material existence. It's the strongest material desire out there beyond killing someone, and it's the one that propels the most. And we see that we go out every day, we see adverts, everything that appeal to men and to women. Okay, here you go, boom. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Much worse. Become free of it, and imagine how much our Krishna consciousness will improve. But all of a sudden the mind isn't disturbed. We can see things how they are, we can see material energy, how it works, and it not affect us. Which means you don't get frustrated, you don't get angry. We can be equipoised. Then we can become empowered, because then Krishna consciousness, when we chant, it doesn't have all these other disturbances and motivations there, because we're free. And being free of lust means you're free of anger. You don't get angry anymore. Imagine that. You don't get angry over little things. It's amazing. I saw a woman yesterday, I was at chant, and had a massive argument with her husband. She just stormed off, she was shouting at him, and she walked off, and the husband standing there, like, didn't have a clue what was happening. And then she got down the street, and she shouted, "Ah, oh, catch it up, bus home!" And she stormed off, and he's like, oh. And so I asked him. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of intrigued. So he was there, then he walked past me there, and I said, "Oh, how you doing?" And he stopped, and I spoke to him a little bit, and then I said, "Oh, what happened there? I saw this, what happened?" He goes, "I don't know." He said, "We were in the shop buying a cake, and I just suggested, well, what about that cake? Because she wanted this cake." And I said, "Oh, what about that cake?" And he said, and then all of a sudden, boom! And he goes, "I have really no idea what just happened." And I was like, wow. And he said, "The only thing I can put it down to is like that she didn't want that cake, she wanted that cake." And he said, that's. And I was like, wow, yeah, that's hard. Anyway. I went on. But I thought this is symptomatic that you see it on the street, especially when you're doing Sankirtan. Sometimes you just say hello to somebody and they scream at you. Because they're so disturbed by this. Again, I remember one person was stopping me and saying hello in Cardiff, and they really kind of like, why do you try stopping me every day? You try stopping me. Why are you leaving me alone? And I was like, whoa, okay. I said, have you ever stopped? And they went, no. I said, so all I've ever said to you is hello. And they went, yes. I'm like, okay. So I'm really sorry for saying hello. And then they kind of realised, they stopped, and they were like, oh, why do you do it every day? I said, I'm friendly. And anyway, we had this exchange, and then we ended up talking about why they were so disturbed. Because they realised, they apologised, and I said, yeah, I said, actually, it's interesting for me because I said, you know, you can see that me just saying hello and smiling at you every day has made you angry. I said, and actually what we want is people to just be nice to us, right? Every day, all the time. And they went, yeah. I said, well, why is it that someone being nice to you? And they turned around and said, it's because, like, yeah, I've got all this going on, and they explained everything that's going on in their life. And it's because they were so frustrated because they weren't getting what they wanted. So even the littlest, nicest of things cause so much anger. And so for devotees, when we practice this culture of not acting, whether it's grossly or subtly, on sex development, when we practice this tolerance of it, when we have this vow, okay, let's know this is sex connections. When we practice this ideal of chastity, finding out the culture behind how to act in a chaste way, that's different. How to act in a way which is like, yes, I'm trying to cultivate my celibacy to increase my Krishna consciousness. All these other problems that we have naturally disappear. So just by cultivating this simple thing, like, yes, cleanliness of the mind, cleanliness of the body, cleanliness of our activities and our actions, which means our motivations aren't based on lust, whether subtly or grossly, makes our japa so much easier. And if our japa is easier, our Krishna consciousness increases. Krishna consciousness increases, the mood of our devotional service increases, and then bhakti, like I said the other weeks, it's the same principle, it's the same thing. Then bhakti develops, and what happens when bhakti develops, bhav descends. Sorry, the other way around. Bhav develops, and then bhakti descends, and then before you know it, we're back home with Krishna in Vrindavan. It's just like jaundice. You take a little bit of sugar, it tastes sour, but we keep on taking it, we put up with the sourness, and then it starts to become sweet, frees us of our material entanglement, and it takes us back to the sweetest thing, right on Krishna's lotus feet. I've got two. It looks like we're going next week as well. Anyway, next week we'll try and get through the other two and the conclusion. If we've got any questions or comments?
How do you notice all the subtleties and or do you just write them down, like all the subtleties?
my lust diary. Just thought now that the other gossips away in our little corner. I think he does have a lust diary.
Confessions.
Yeah. So confession, we'll start that, yeah. It's just it's like with everything, we devotees are meant to be introspective. We're meant to examine our heart, we're meant to examine our consciousness, right? We're meant to actually stop and take stock, okay, how am I chanting my japa? What's my motivations behind this? It's not a gross thing, it's not a harsh thing, it's not a puritanical thing. And our tendency is when we read things, hear things, because they're so gross, to stop us acting on them, we tend to have to go to gross extremes, which means puritanical. you heard of the Puritans, isn't it? The Lutherans of Henry VIII's time. They would live in these harsh houses, no decorations, no enjoyment. The food was just boiled veg, no spicing, no salt. Because if you want a little salt, that's sense enjoyment, so you're a sinner. I'm not like that. We're the highest enjoyers. we're the biggest enjoyers. But we're just trying to take our enjoyment away from material energy and towards Krishna. But we're enjoying Krishna. Who can reciprocate with us more than Krishna? Material energy can't. So the enjoyment of material energy reciprocates with us due to our material endeavors. It's so much less. It's like a dirty little puddle compared to the pristine, glistening freshwater lake of Krishna's reciprocation with us. So, we're not trying to say, yes, we're puritanical. So we're introspective. How am I acting? How to act in a cultured way. Get knowledge. Put the knowledge into practice. When we read the Bhagavatam and it says act like this, it's like, okay, well, how can I act like this? And act like it. Not some puritanical reaction. So it's like, okay, this is going to have this effect on my consciousness. Now, do I want that? If I don't want it, then as unpalatable as certain activities may be, it's like, well, okay, I'm not going to do that. And then there's avenues for it. It's like, material enjoyment. Well, if brahmacharya life's too difficult, brahmacharya life's too difficult, then you can enter Grihastha ashram. Now, generally we tend to view Grihastha ashram, there's two types, there's Grihamayi and there's Grihastha. Generally, when we're fired at brahmacharis, we look at the Grihastha ashram and we think Grihamayi. Okay, that's what it is, it's for enjoyment. No, it's for spiritual enjoyment. The Grihamayi ashram, that's materialistic, that's something else. But the Grihastha ashram, that's for spiritual enjoyment. That you're doing things with Krishna. But you're doing it from a platform. For women, it's a platform where they feel that they're having the emotional security, emotional protection. For men, Sri Maharaj makes it very simple. He says so they focus their energy on one woman instead of all women. So instead of it all of a sudden being, this unrestricted, bombardment, because men are very gross, it's like, actually, no, okay, here. And then that marriage protects the man and the women from his gaze. Now, we're introspective then, we think, okay, how do I act? How do I change? Yes, this is happening. My body's attacking me in this way. My conditioning's attacking me in this way. How am I going to become free of it? How can I tweak it? Not just like, okay, what's the puritanical reaction? Because the Puritanism only gets you, the puritanical way only gets you so far. It beats it down, it beats it down, it beats it down. All the different intricacies of our material desires get beaten down, but eventually they will come up again. Whereas if we deal with them, if we're introspective and we think, okay, why is this happening? Okay, here's the activity by which I can deal with this another. And they're dealt with. You don't have to beat them down. So we're not wasting energy on beating things down because they're dealt with. Then that energy can be put into Krishna consciousness. So it's the same here. If whatever works for you, if it's some kind of diary, okay. But the main thing is, yes, we're reading stuff, apply it. Look at it, analyze it. What does this mean to my life? How am I going to apply this to my life? What's my motivation behind activities? How can I change my activities in a way which is going to improve my advancement in Krishna consciousness? So it requires us to be thoughtful, which in Kali is difficult. We're so used to just the senses saying do it and we do it. So the thought of actually being thoughtful and introspective is like, it's difficult. That's what we have to do, we have to change.
So I've explained to you before that I went to New Govardhan, me and Esther went to New Govardhan, and we were living in this like kind of hippie yogi village that we were volunteers were that would help out on the farm. And you know, they considered themselves yogis and stuff like this, you know, but then would also question why they couldn't be God at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some interesting conversations with this like middle-aged woman, maybe about 55 something, who heard on the grapevine of the illicit sex thing. So I tried my best to explain it to her, but you know, her response was like, which I really don't like this saying, but everything in moderation. You know? Why can, and then she would say things like, oh, I'm just interested in your opinion, when she wasn't. What she wanted to do was listen to my opinion, or not my opinion, what the text said, and then just break it, try her best to break it apart and say why she completely disagreed with it, or to a certain degree. How come there are those people out there where even when you explain it into a logical sense that you just can't get it?
Yeah,
It's that an internal problem as well. And then then there's that question, and then I've got a part 2 question, which is the
It might only take 20 minutes to answer a question.
So that's my first one. Why can't people get it at times when you explain it?
Yeah.
And then the second one is, you spoke about the divorce rate being higher. Is that because externally people within Christian consciousness can keep up a facade for so long, and then internally it's not there, so then it just eventually breaks down after 10 years or whatever, where they just can't keep that up? That's my 2 part.
Second part, the whole is a big thing. First part, yeah, that's why we don't tend to kind of go to people that don't know anything. We don't go to them with the 4 regs.
Yeah, she brought it up.
They won't get it.
Yeah.
And they may have heard it, yeah, so they bring it up and they're like, well, why can't you do this?
Yeah.
So they're not going to understand that without having a slight purification of heart. Because for us, when we become devotees, the motivation is, well, if I have these restrictions to my material life, then actually it will help my Krishna consciousness. And we understand that. We got to that point by chanting, through association, from taking prasadam. So when you have those things, when you have the holy name, you have prasadam and association, then the regulative principles, you see, okay, here's all these people, you see them as good. When you first come, all devotees are angels. And so it's like, okay, I'll try it. And then you feel the difference. And generally as well, when we come to wanting to be devotees, we're kind of exasperated with material life. It's got to a point where we're just like, no, I've had enough. It's rubbish, to some degree or another. So we're open to hearing about material restrictions. Because like, okay, well that might work. Well, again, I talked the other week, you know, when Taryn first got a book, he would say, this is a book, but his pocket and say, that sounds nice. And that was that. And the same thing, you know, I was remembering, yeah, that's never going to happen. I like chanting, I like devotees. That and forth. So it's not palatable. But through association, through prasadam, through chanting the holy name, all of a sudden we realise, well, if I practice this, you know, this spiritual realisation, spiritual experience becomes more, so we're willing to do it. Because of the taste from devotional service, association, and holy name. We're not willing to do it just because, oh, that's austerity, you know, yeah, I'll get some spiritual advancement, I'm told. Without the holy name, association, and prasadam, we wouldn't feel compelled to. Why? I get from it. I want to enjoy it. It's natural for the soul to enjoy. This doesn't sound like enjoyment. But we do it because we get a higher taste. And then we see, okay, yes, these principles are there to stop us degrading again and lowering again and taking us back into the material sphere. So somebody that's not within association, it's not chanting the holy name, it's not eating prasadam, they're going to find it very difficult to get their head around it. No matter how much we explain it in a nice way, you know, it's difficult for them. Yet, you know, I've met people that have tried celibacy on the street, and they're like, yeah, you know, yeah, we feel much better. We feel all of a sudden it's freeing because, well, now I don't have this motivating factor in every exchange. You know, the women and the men that I've spoken to differently, that tried it, not as devotees, but all of a sudden you can have a conversation with someone not thinking about, you know, well, okay, are we going to exploit each other or not? It's not there anymore because it's not the motivation factor. And then you see how much of the material existence, how many interactions between men and women changes these days. But the basics of that is actually motivated behind, you know, are we going to have sex? It's there. It's bundled in a different way. I remember getting something photocopied once. I just got into a conversation with the two women that were running the shop. That one woman, the guy who had come in before me, was like completely her type of guy, and she was all like, and so they were telling me about that, and I turned around and said, yeah, I know that I'm not her type of guy, because every time I come in here, she's actually very rude to me and doesn't want to know me. And yet I've just seen her have this exchange with this other guy, and she's like, you know, the most helpful assistant you could ever want. And the manager was laughing. And I said, so you know, it's very obvious. I said, and so I asked him, I said, so what do you think when you're seeing him? And she said, literally, everyone who comes in the shop, every male, she was very open, and she admitted, she's saying, would I marry him? Yes or no? And I asked the manageress, I said, do all women think like this? And she told me, I said, yeah. Now you ask a man, when they see a woman, when they meet a woman, if they're honest, they're not thinking, oh, would I marry her? They're thinking something a lot more gross. But the same principle's there, accept or reject. And that powers the whole of material society on different levels of subtlety and grossness. And sometimes we do manipulate that for preaching. But it's dangerous. But you can see, okay, if that's the foundation of all society, where people don't even realise it, when you become free of it, you see it. Because all of a sudden your exchanges aren't about that. Because you made that decision, okay, I'm celibate, so now my motivation behind speaking to these people isn't actually, you know, either am I going to marry them, or am I going to have sex with them? That's not there. And so some people, very rarely, but some people without devotional activities and association, they see that, and they're like, okay, this is great, I'm free of this thing now. The problem is, because they haven't got the higher taste, they can't maintain it. So then they have to fall down with that spirit, because there's no taste. So that's why women like that, even though she's practicing yoga, she had, you know, hopefully a slightly more refined material existence than others, because she hasn't got the higher taste, they can't maintain it, they can't understand it. So they have to justify, oh, okay, well, everything in moderation, because there's no higher taste. So if you're trying to give up the highest material taste, you need something higher. If you're not getting something higher, devotee association with holy name prasada, you have no chance. Second part of your question, it's difficult because it's generally there's a way, a cultured way, that man and wife associate together. And David Maharaj does this with the way he set up his stuff. He does this very, very well, actually. He sets strict lines, you know, if they're under a certain age, you associate in this manner for this amount of time, so you get to know each other. Now, when there's a strong foundation based in the cultured way of doing it at the beginning, then generally when the marriage goes through ups and downs, which it will, because two materially conditioned souls that are trying to practice together, that there will be. And even friendships, there's ups and downs. So if the foundation is strong and based on a cultured way, then it's respectful. And so the couple know each other, they like each other as people, not as objects of sense gratification, but as people. They get on as much as a man and a woman can. They're friends, they're compatible. So all of that's done and found out in a cultured way, which has some restriction, because generally the tendency is when man and woman get together initially, the more gross aspects, the gross desires come to the forefront and you want to enjoy it. So therefore when you associate, it's done in a regulated manner, it's done in a controlled manner so that those desires don't overwhelm, they're tempered. That's difficult because we're not used to that. We're used to, I like the look of you, you like the look of me, let's see if we get on. Generally in Kami life, then there's some gross activities that happen, and then if you're fortunate enough that you still get on after that, that you actually do like each other as people, and you're compatible, then great. If you're not, then you go your separate ways. Now, in devotee life, unfortunately, I personally think that the divorce rate is so high is because we don't do it enough in the cultured way. We tend to still, because we're not honest, we're not introspective enough, generally still we may have some of this idea that if you're entering that ashram from a brahmacharini or brahmachari ashram, it's some kind of step backwards, or it's some kind of fall down. Because we have that attitude, then it's very difficult for the brahmacharis, not so much the brahmacharinis, to actually say, okay, for me to progress spiritually, I need to acknowledge that I have to be purified of this situation by going through the Grihastha ashram, because the brahmachari ashram, I'm not actually being a brahmachari or brahmachari. Outwardly it may seem like it, but inwardly I'm struggling. So then if all your energy is dealing with the struggle and not actually focusing on Krishna consciousness, better put yourself in a position of strength where, okay, now I'm a little bit peaceful, I'll get purified in this way instead of this way. Brahmachari ashram is voluntary purification, which is harder. Grihastha ashram, it's not voluntary. You have to surrender. You don't have a choice. You've got to pay bills, as you know. You've got to have a job. You've got to pay the bills. So there's certain surrenders which are enforced, which in one way is easier and in another way is harder. Neither situation is going to be the perfect situation, because there's no such thing as a perfect situation into the world. The problem is, personally, I think, is that Bhaktivedanta Prema Rasa, he actually very openly says in a lecture given 2 years ago, that the problem with he's talking about the brahmachari ashram and ISKCON as a whole. So the problem is that 5% of brahmacharis stay brahmachari all their life and turn into sannyasis. 95% go into the Grihastha ashram. He said the problem is we train all the brahmacharis as if they're all the 5% and not as if they're the 95%. And that's the problem. It's not such a problem in the brahmacharini ashram, because for brahmacharinis getting married isn't a big deal. It's like, okay, yeah, one day we'll do this, and they'll be Krishna conscious. The problem is in the brahmachari ashram, the tendency is that we train everyone to be the 5%, not the 95%, which isn't the Vedic principle. And that's not me saying that, it's Bhaktivedanta Prema Rasa. So that then, if we're training with 5%, but then they're not, they're the 95%, but then there's no training on how to deal with that, and then it builds up and it's kept inside, it's not talked about, it's not conversed about, and then that comes with trust. If we're worried, like, well, if I say this, I'm going to end up in a situation I don't actually want to be in, just because I'm talking about, oh, I'm disturbed by this, and then, all of a sudden the authority says, oh, Got to get married then. No. But then if that happens, then you're married and all of a sudden it's like, hang on, oh no, how did this happen? 6 months later and boom. No. If the brahmachari can open up their heart, discuss in a safe way, and then guide it safely, it's nice. And then if still they feel they want to change ashram, then it's done in a cultured way, a regulated way, a way that manages the initial desires, and in a way which the two people getting together actually get on, then generally it won't lead to divorce, because it's not based on lust. And that's why probably the divorce rate is lower in the material world, is because there are a lot of people that they get married because they get on. And they've known each other for 3-4 years before they get married. And so they know, oh yeah, we get on. Now, as far as our society is, we tend to get married. David Meatmarsh set it up that actually, depending on your age, it takes longer, which works. It's good. Unfortunately, we have a tendency to be like, okay, the brahmachari's got to the point of breaking point, and then he has to act, and then, okay, it's whatever girl tickles his fancy, or unfortunately some of the matches do go out of their way to work on a brahmachari as well. It does happen. And then it's all based on lust. And so that's one of the 7 ways that a marriage won't work. It'll end in not only divorce, but the couple not being Krishna conscious. But then if they've had kids, then that again leads to unwanted progeny. So you can see if the foundations are there and everything's done in this cultured way, it works. So then if our divorce rate is high, we have to be honest as a society and say, okay, well, something's going wrong here within the culture of how to do it, and less aggressive. Which requires us to be open and admit a few things, and be open about talking about certain things, and to be free of the kind of false ego of it. And it's difficult, because then when you try and enforce that as a society, some people don't like it, and they don't want to do it, and so then they have their issues. But we can't, we need to be, okay, as a society, saying, no, this is the way to do it. If we do it like this, it will lead to a higher level of society. The divorce rate will go down. And we'll end up with nice grihastha families, nice grihastha children, stable economy within our community, and a stable community which can grow and be an example for the non-devotee community to look at. But it requires a certain amount of strength, of authority to do it, and education, and trust. So we're kind of lucky here, because to some degree we have that. I'm not saying we won't have our problems, because we're still very new and there's certain things which we've never really had to deal with, which we will in the future. Because for a long time we pretty much had brahmacharis. And now we have brahmacharis as well. So it's inevitable. But if we can do it in a cultured way, an open way, that's non-judgmental, that's not puritanical, then actually we end up with nice grihasthas. If we can't do it in that way, then we end up problems. But then that's again, it's down to us again, internally, the brahmacharis to act in a cultured way, the brahmacharis to act in a cultured way, and then there won't be problems. Because it can't be a police state where you've got some authorities. And you can't have Shankarupa going around with a stick. Stop talking to me. Shankarupa wouldn't like that. Mataji's wouldn't like that. And the brahmacharis wouldn't like it. So there's some, we have to be responsible. through, you know, we can be educated, but at the end of the day we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Because we can't be in a police state. There's some authority there where it's like, okay, look, gentle people may every now and again have to say, you shouldn't be doing this. And the saints and males should, you know, okay, look, you know, if you want to stay in this situation, you're going to change. Stop doing this. No. Time for questions next week, because I'm sure there'll be more that are right. I don't want to go over too much time. It's really been yakking away for nearly 2 hours. We can ask over breakfast maybe. Interesting, my dad would eat it years.
Rather than lectures,
Which ones?
the ones you told, the facultative manuscripts.